All right, good evening, everyone. With 65 members present and of the 100-person body, I can call this meeting to order. We have two more just sliding in. Before I hand it over to Seth, I was asked to give an update on the ballot for the office of RTM for the November 4th election. As you know, the ballot was set back in early September, with the names printed on the ballot. There was one candidate who chose to petition on in District 1, so his name also is printed on the ballot. After that deadline passed, there was the opportunity to be a write-in candidate, and there are 4 candidates, electors of the town, who have chosen to run for office via the write-in method. There are 2 candidates in District 2, which creates a contested race for District 2. There is 1 candidate as a write-in for District 3, and there is 1 candidate as a write-in for District 4. So as you go to the polls, whether you're voting early voting, which is going on now through Sunday the 1st, 2nd, the 2nd, every day you may early vote from now until November 2nd in room 119. If you're going to be out of town, you also have the option to vote via absentee. You can come see me for that. Or you can, of course, go to the polls at your respective polling site on Tuesday, November 4th. If you were in Districts 2, 3, or 4, and you would like to consider the candidate for write-in, please ask the moderator or me if you're voting absentee, and I will supply the name. That name is not otherwise posted on any material that you will see in the election site. So again, we have 4 write-ins, 2 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. Otherwise, the list of candidates is baked, it is set, and we will have the announcement of the winners on Tuesday. And with that, I will turn it over to Seth.
Well, here we are, the last meeting before the election, so we want to make sure we had plenty to do. So if everybody will be patient tonight, we'll try and orchestrate this thing. First, just a quick request from Lois Schneider. Lois? Lois is chair of the technology.
Pretty ironic to stand up here after our late start to this meeting, but I'll pretend that didn't happen. We are trying to standardize and formalize our approach to using the equipment. We have all the equipment. And in doing that, we would like to see if there's any volunteer, you can either contact me or Krista, to be sort of the AV person for the auditorium and taking us amateurs out of this thing. The equipment's all here. We know how to use some of it, but it needs to be standardized. And we're hoping that somebody within the RTM has that expertise and would like to volunteer and do it for the town. If not, we will go to Plan B. So I thank anyone. Thank you for considering it. And if anyone would like to join our crew, we'd be very delighted. Thank you.
Before we accept the agenda, I was approached by the first selectman after the Rules Committee met to come before us and address us on town debt. It's becoming increasingly important. We've made a lot of decisions to spend money, but the timing of when you spend it and how you spend it is a whole other game, and it's coming to be more and more important, and so John's going to talk to us a little bit about that. We'll with your agreement, without objection, we'll add him to the agenda, and he'll speak just before 25-23 appropriation and bonding resolution for $5.2 million. So without objection, if there's no objection, I'll go ahead and add his presentation. Any objection? Thank you. Okay. We'll move on now, and I'll take a motion to approve the minutes for the September 29 RTM meeting. A second, please. Comments? Any comments on the minutes? Okay. Ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? I hear none. And if you have an abstention, you could give that to Krista later. Minutes stand approved unanimously. Next is 25-21, approve amendment to the Code of Ordinances to establish zoning citation regulations. Speaking on behalf of the Planning and Zoning and Housing Committee, Amy Zabatakis.
Hi, good evening. Amy Zabatakis. Sorry, there's a lot of stuff here. Amy Zabatakis, District 5, Chair, RTM Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee. I move Resolution 2521, consideration and action on approving the adoption of a zoning citation ordinance for the enforcement of zoning regulations. Do I have a second? Thank you. Without objection, I will waive reading of the resolution. On October 16th, the Planning and Zoning and Housing Committee had a special meeting with 10 members of our 14-person committee present, representing a quorum. During the meeting, we heard a presentation from Jeremy Ginsberg, Director of Planning and Zoning, on the rationale for the proposed ordinance, how the draft was prepared, and he answered questions regarding future enforcement. Just by way of very short background, I hope everyone had a chance to read the memos that were attached to the ordinance. Pursuant to Connecticut Statute 8-12, a municipality may, but does not have to, adopt an ordinance setting forth penalties for zoning violations. To date, the town of Darien has not had such an ordinance in place. This is an ordinance that has been adopted by some of the other communities locally. Jeremy has spoken with those directors of planning and zoning in the other communities, and it seems to be working well as a tool for those departments. So the idea is that the adoption of this ordinance would give our town's zoning enforcement officer a way to encourage compliance with the town's zoning regulations. Without this ordinance in place, what we have currently, in an extreme situation, a lawsuit can be filed for violation, or if someone applies for a zoning permit, the town can refuse to issue the permit until the violation is rectified. But there's not really any other way to, short of a lawsuit, if you've got someone who isn't otherwise applying for any sort of permit, to try to encourage people to comply with the zoning regulations. And again, I keep using the word encourage because that's the purpose of this. This is not supposed to be a way for the town to make money. The town does not intend to go out and look for people to penalize. This is more about situations where folks are just refusing to comply with the regulations. The idea is that sort of just having the threat of a fine as a tool in their arsenal may bring about greater compliance. If you've read the ordinance, you see that there's a process by which an individual is warned that they're in violation, then the citation is issued, and after the citation is issued, there's an opportunity to appeal the fine to a hearing officer. And then after that, if they're still not happy, at that point you would end up in Superior Court. During the PZ&H meeting, we did identify a few typographic errors and asked that we amended the ordinance to have those corrected to confirm that a violator has 10 days within which to appeal a violation. It was 10 in one section and 15 in another, so that was amended. And that was in the version that was circulated to TGS&A, who met tonight. The TGS&A also adopted those amendments. In addition, TGS&A in their meeting this evening, so this obviously was not before PZ&H, but it's TGS&A in their meeting this evening approved an amendment to 54, 103, and 104 to confirm that after the first $150 fine, no additional fines would accrue. So otherwise it's 150 every day, but no additional fines would accrue until after that 10-day appeal period has run. So I would like to make a motion to correct the errors in the ordinance that were identified by P, Z, and H. Again, to bring all of the sections in conformance, that you do have 10 days to appeal, and then also to appeal the sections to conform that after the first 150, no further daily fine would accrue until after the 10-day period has expired. Can I get a second for that?
Second.
Okay, second.
Okay, debate? Debate? Excuse me?
The motion right now is to amend the resolution and ordinance.
So we're voting on the amendment, which cleans up some of the typo errors, et cetera. Okay? So, no debate. If you're ready to vote, I would ask, without objection, to vote by acclamation. Is there any objection to doing that? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, I hear none.
Okay.
Abstentions, I hear none. Outstanding. So the amendments are approved. Now we have to vote on the motion itself as amended.
Yes, but I think we'd have a report from TGS&A first.
Joe?
So, well, before TGS&A reports, I'll say that PZ and Planning, Zoning, and Housing approved the ordinance on our meeting on, when did we meet again? October 16th. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved the changes on October 14th, the Board of Selectmen on October 6th. Our committee voted unanimously in favor of the proposed ordinance and recommends the same to the full RTM.
Great. So now we'll vote on the motion as amended. Oh, we have another. TGS has a, please. David Bain. Going to report for TGS&A. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Bain from District 5, and I'm clerk of TGS&A, and I've been asked to give this evening's report on the proposed resolution of the zoning ordinances. TGS&A met on October 21 with 8 of 11 members present. We had a series of questions about the ordinance, and we decided not to vote, and we asked Mr. Ginsburg or someone from the Planning and Zoning Department to meet with us, so we held a special meeting this evening with, again, 8 of 11 members present. Mr. Ginsburg was there, and he answered many of the questions that were raised at our prior meeting, and the committee was also provided with the enabling statutes under state law that provides the town with the ability to make this ordinance. Mr. Ginsburg emphasized that the intent and the reasoning for the ordinance is not so much to, or is not at all to penalize homeowners or to raise revenue, but rather to obtain compliance with the town's zoning ordinances when property owners refuse to work with the town to come into compliance or appeal from the violations. The way this process will work is there'll be a notice of violation or a cease and desist order issued to the homeowner. They'll have a time to take an appeal or to come into compliance, and only after that will fines be levied. And it's important to remember that these zoning ordinances are not intended to, are really intended to protect the town and adjoining homeowners from overbuilding and overuse and improper use of the properties. And so it's really a protection for our entire town. Our committee agrees that the proposed ordinance is an important tool for the town, as Mr. Ginsburg emphasized, because currently a violation, as Amy mentioned, requires that it be so severe that the town has to go to court to sue somebody over that. And that's not going to happen for a lot of violations that happen in the town. But meanwhile, the harm is being felt by the adjoining homeowners and the town in general for people disregarding our zoning ordinances. So TGS&A generally was in favor of the ordinance, but we did believe that it should reflect a certain degree of consistency in terms of a violation not accruing additional violations until the 10-day appeal period has passed, or the period in which to pay the violation and not admit liability. So we proposed that amendment, and thank you everyone for agreeing to that. So TGS&A voted tonight, again, unanimously to approve the amendment that was just passed by this body and to approve the ordinance itself, and we strongly encourage the rest of the RTM to approve this ordinance this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, David. Any other committees wish to report on that? Town officials, comments? Okay. Debate from the body? See none? Yes, Liz Bacon.
Who is going to identify these violations, and how will that process work?
You want it, or do you want Jeremy, or? Oh, great, Amy, thanks. Okay, Jeremy.
So the violations currently are identified by the zoning enforcement officer, who is a staff member in the planning and zoning office. It's the identification of the violation isn't really what's changing. It is the process by which the town would be able to address a violation. Currently, the zoning enforcement officer, and sometimes it's because a neighbor will bring an issue to the zoning enforcement officer's attention. Sometimes it'll be something that's seen by the zoning enforcement officer being out in the community, but it is still the zoning enforcement officer's obligation currently and will continue to be so.
No, I agree with Amy that only the zoning enforcement officer will be allowed to issue a citation. There will, as part of this ordinance you've all read, there will be the need for an appointment of a hearing officer to hear any appeal of the citation by the zoning enforcement officer. The state statutes specifically say that that hearing officer is an appointment to be made by the first selectman. So that is to be determined. But Amy's correct that only the zoning enforcement officer can issue a citation.
Further questions from the body? Okay, ready to vote? All those in favor, please rise. Yeah. Opposed? And abstentions? Okay, we'll go ahead. Okay, while we're doing the votes, we'll go ahead and move on to 25-22, an ordinance for the abatement of illicit sump pump discharge into public sewers. And speaking on behalf of Public Works, Ralph Hoban.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rolf Oben. I'm District 4 Public Works Committee Chair. During the Board of Selectmen meeting of October 6th, the Board of Selectmen approved the resolution for the adoption of wrong one. I apologize. Excuse me. Okay, let me try this again. Thank you for your patience. Okay. During the Board of Selectmen meeting of October 6th, the board discussed a request from the Darien Sewer Commission to adopt an ordinance for the abatement of illicit sump pump discharge into the public sewers. The board discussed the request and recommended to propose ordinance to the RTM. I move to approve the resolution 25-22 to the representative town meeting of the town of Darien, approving the adoption of an ordinance for the abatement of illicit sump pump discharge into public sewers. May I have a second? Second? Okay. Without objection, I'd like to waive the reading of the resolution. Before I go any further, I just want to take a quick survey here. I'd like to ask everybody in the RTM, in the term inflow and infiltration in the context of our sewer system, does everybody understand what that term means? If you do, raise your hand. Okay, and if you don't, raise your hand. That's a fairly substantial group. Okay. Yeah, about a 50-50, maybe 60-40. Okay, so just briefly, infiltration and inflow. First, infiltration. Infiltration is water that's in the ground, and it has a way of finding its own path, and if it finds a path to a pipe that has a breach in any way, be it a connection or the pipe itself, that water will infiltrate into the sewer pipe. That is infiltration. Inflow, on the other hand, is water that is injected into the sewer pipe in some other way. It may have various different possibilities, but certainly one is a sump pump. So inflow and infiltration. The acronym is I&I. This resolution is very similar to the one we just approved, which is it is looking to enforce compliance with an existing ordinance. Okay, so there's very much so a similarity. Wish I had David here to put the presentation up for me. Okay, dating back to September 2020, the consulting firm Arcadis, working in concert with the Darien Sewer Commission and Darien Public Works, developed an infiltration inflow program flow monitoring report, which was approved on December 2nd, 2020 by the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection, or DEEP. We approved the scope of the evaluation survey to determine the extent of excessive infiltration inflow in the areas outlined in the report. This led to a program dedicated to the inspection of rehabilitation of the town's sewer system. Phases 1 and 2 have been completed at the cost of $2.5 million. Phase 3 is in progress for an additional $1.9 million. These costs are reflected in the sewer bill that you get in the mail, at least for those of you who are connected to the source. Progress has been made to where, for the first time in years, the Sewer Commission approved no increase to the sewer service fee. The 3 phases of rehabilitation cover 2/3 of the town's sewer system, so there is more work to be done. Some of the town's sewer pipe dates back to the 1930s, so we're not far from coming up on 100-year-old infrastructure in our sewer system. Inflow and infiltration to the sewer system is largely contingent on the amount of rainfall. During the 12-month period ending July 2025, Fairfield County had an 11% decrease in normal rainfall. The Darien sewer user community took in 512 million gallons of water from Aquarian, water delivered to your house for your use, but sent 728 million gallons of mixed water effluent to the Stamford Water Pollution Control Authority, or WPCA, for treatment. That means Darien sent 216 million gallons of excessive inflow and infiltration to WPCA for processing. That's nearly 30% of the total amount for the year. The previous year's excess I&I was 54%. Nearly over half of what was sent for processing and cleaning in their facility was attributed by I&I. The excess water places unnecessary cost and strain to the sewer infrastructure pipes, connections, manholes, and equipment such as pumps, switches, and backup generators, etc. For the last 5 years, a flyer has been enclosed with the sewer bill that asks for your help. If your sump pump is connected to your sanitary sewer, it must be disconnected. Discharging groundwater, surface water, or rainwater to the sanitary sewer is a violation of the state plumbing code as well as the town code of Darien. Town code of ordinances, that is. After spending years devoted to sewer flow and capacity analysis, the Commission has concluded that enforcement of the ordinance is needed. And they are asking for your help by recommending a change to the ordinance. The Commission has drafted a cover letter asking sewer users to fill out a self-reporting form to be signed by the property owner to indicate if they have a sump pump and whether it is or is not hooked up to the sanitary sewer line. The form, along with images of the sump pump pipe connections, is to be sent to the Commission with 90 days of receiving the cover letter. Images are needed as a matter of record in support of the documentation. If the user's sump pump is connected to the sewer line, they will need to plan to disconnect the pump from the sewer line and divert the discharge to outside the house or building. The Commission plans to mail the self-reporting form with instructions in January, followed by a reminder in April. The Sewer Commission will give reasonable and fair consideration to work with property owners to address their sump pump connection. The Public Works Department will be available to inform and guide owners through the process. Communication is essential to ensure a smooth disconnection transition. From the completed forms, the Department of Public Works will begin to know locations where sump pumps exist and whether they are discharging to the sanitary sewer system. Failure to return a form and failure to render a pump disconnection to the sewer line can result in a $250 fine. When proven, failure to submit true and honest answers will be subject to a $250 fine. This is a matter of public health and safety, reducing wear and tear to the sanitary sewer system with a focus towards controlling or reducing costs and fair use of the sewer system. Today, an unknown number of sewer users are discharging unnecessary water to the sanitary sewer system, causing the remainder of the sewer user community to financially subsidize those who are in violation of the State Plumbers Code and the Town of Darien Ordinance. The Commission has no authority to enter anyone's home or building without the owner's permission. The RTM Public Works Committee held a meeting on June 26th with Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works for the Town of Darien, and Craig Flaherty, Chairman of the Darien Sewer Commission. We discussed the magnitude of the problem and various aspects of the proposed resolution. Overall, the Public Works Committee expressed strong support to Ed and Craig to take this action. That meeting is certainly available on TV 79. The total amount of time that we spent going over this topic was about an hour. So if you really want to get a better idea of all the things that we did discuss, I would encourage you to watch TV 79. I gave you a plug there, Jim. You're welcome. With 7 of 14 Public Works Committee members present at a special meeting held on October 23rd, all members voted in favor of the resolution for the newly proposed Ordinance 22-52 sump pump discharge prohibitions and recommends same to the full RTM.
Thank you, Earl. Joe? Okay. Speaking for TGSNA, Joe Michelli.
Joe Michelli, District 4, Vice Chair of TGSNA. On October 21st, our committee met with 8 of 11 members present. We voted to table the motion on the sump pump. We had many questions on the ordinance and its enforcement. But we do know that we did realize that there's a big problem that has to be dealt with.
So just to clarify, TGSNA tabled discussion among themselves. Are you making a motion now to table this? Okay, it was just a discussion within the committee, okay. Next, for Public Health and Safety, Mac Patrick.
Hi, I'm Mac Patrick, Chair of Public Health and Safety and member of District 5. The Public Health and Safety Committee met with 9 of 13 members present. First, before I start, I wanted to let you know we heard a report from Darien Police Chief Jeremiah Marin, and he discussed the e-bikes in town, and I really recommend you watch that part of the meeting. It's very, very well done. But anyway, our committee discussed and voted on the ordinance for the abatement of illicit sump pump discharge into public sewers. Concerns were raised regarding the following. 1, an affidavit mailing plan to all 5,400 sewered households in Darien, which requires self-certification and photos. 2, the intrusiveness of home inspections. Members suggested a description of the sewer police. Specifically, Section 1013-8, which notes the power of authorized agents. 3, fairness for residents who rarely use their sump pumps, including senior homeowners and associated plumbing costs. Lack of clear data distinguishing infiltration from sump pump volume. Critics of our committee favored education and fee adjustments instead of mandates. Supporters cited a need to preserve sewage capacity and noted new apartment housing coming online. Motion of the ordinance failed to advance. We had 4 opposed, 3 in favor, and 2 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Any other committees wish to report? Okay. Town officials wish to talk? Questions from the body? Yes.
Priscilla Wong, District 1. I think it's on. I'm just not close enough.
Okay.
Question. So I'm assuming these areas of town that flood a lot may have some pumps, and I'm assuming that they're permitted. When they get the permit, are they told where to direct the water? And if the water is directed somewhere in the lawn, does it end up in the sewer system anyway? I'm not really that familiar with how that sort of outflow from somebody's basement works.
So how does it work? Do you want to do it? Okay.
Okay, so there's 2 ways that a sump pump can discharge water from a basement. One is the topic we're discussing tonight, which is a direct hookup to the sewer pipe in the basement, and then it flows out through the sewer pipe and goes on to Stanford to be processed. Another way is that the piping from the sump pump is actually directed out of the house and then into the yard. And it's generally, I'm not aware of there being a necessity for any permit per se to do that, unless you're in a particular area that is prone to flooding and is going to be under possible scrutiny for that reason. My own personal experience and recommendation would be that you'd want to get that pipe out at least 10 feet away from the house. In my own case, we dug a trench and we took the pipe out about 20 feet to a boulder that we have in the front yard, and it just drains off in front of the boulder. But there's no permitting per se for this. There is an ordinance that says, though, that it's not allowed to hook up directly to the sewer line. Have I answered your question?
So it's okay for it to go out into the yard and then perhaps into the neighbor's yard?
I don't think it would be allowed to go to your neighbor's yard.
But how can you tell? You can't know where the water is going to flow.
Well, you'd have to maybe monitor that in some way, but not only that, I'm not sure the neighbors would accept that all too well, but I'm fairly certain that the planning and zoning is very sensitive about water in your yard and that you contain it and keep it in your yard and not allow it to flow to your neighbors per se. Okay, I don't know how they'd catch that, but that's my understanding. Jerry Ginsberg, he left already? Too bad. Okay.
Doug Bernacki, District 5. I have water that flows from city property onto my property right now, but okay, I said I have water that flows from city property, the school property, onto my property now, and have something like 7 or 8 dry wells to take the water off the soccer fields that come our way. But my concern is that if you have all of this water, and it sounds like half the I&I is half of our usage, where's this water going to go? Aren't we creating a greater problem of just leaving this water in our community? I mean, right now it's going to Stanford sewer system and getting out of here, but if we leave it, are we going to flood everybody out eventually? I mean, every month we have that much water standing around. It's not all going to evaporate.
Well, Ed's here tonight, and I think he can address that from his knowledge, as is Craig Flaherty.
I was wondering where Craig disappeared to. Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works. Glad to see. Amy made a good point. We should first understand that there is a difference between the sanitary sewer system and our storm system. Understand that stormwater, groundwater, infiltration of the ground, any of those things need to go into the stormwater. Sanitary sewer is only for the sanitary sewer effluent. That's the designation for the ordinance. Now to the point about flooding areas. If you analyze and take a look at why some pumps go on, when they go on, and visualize when a storm uses a storm system, piping, creeks, rivers, whatever it may be, you understand that they do not go at the same time. Okay, and the easy way for me to explain that to you is the reason we're doing this is I can tell in 2 or 3 of my pump stations. We have 14 in Darien that we maintain. After a storm, some pumps are running in these things, causing our pump stations to run 24 hours longer than any other of the pump stations. So after a storm, after it subsides, water seeps into the ground, it goes out to the Long Island Sound. 11 of my pump stations shut down. 3 keep running. And they're in low-lying areas. There's some of them closer to the water, some of them closer to streams and rivers. So we identified these areas and we said, okay, how do we figure out how much goes in? And this is when we started the Sewer Commission and ourselves about 3 years ago, trying to decide how do we get information from the residents, the sewer users. And this whole process takes us back to, we are paying $1.2 to $1.5 million a year to the city of Stanford to clean water, treat it. It's ridiculous. So as you've heard from Rolf, we've spent almost $4.5 million right now taking care of our infrastructure that's in the ground. Manholes, pipes, whatever it may be. Finding some of the direct connects. We use smoke testing. We put smoke into the pipe and we see it actually coming out of the roof of your house. Those little vents that are up there, we can tell you're connected. These are methods that we use. Now we're back to looking for help from our sewer users. And I'm not fooled. I'm a realist. I know not everyone may be as forthcoming. I understand that. But there's 5,432 sewer users here. If I get 80% back, that's a good start for me, because we're not stopping for 1 year. We're actually going to do this 2, 3, 4 years. And may we send out these notices. We may send them out every 6 months. and it comes with a fine. We're looking for information from you. It's not punitive. I'm not looking to bankroll anything. What I'm missing right now is capacity in our sewer system. And from that, when it rains hard enough, the sewage comes up out of the ground. It comes up out of the manholes. And if you folks don't know, 5 years ago, we were cited and sued by Save the Sound and the DEEP. And they required us to go after this I&I. I think Ralph was really good at explaining that. That's what we're doing right now. We've grabbed the low-hanging fruit. We've gone after sections that were high rates of flows, high rates of overflows. We circled those areas, and we do that now. But what we're trying to do right now is go and get information about sump pumps. And once I get that information back, it's as simple as telling me, no, you don't have it, or yes, you do, and yes, you do. Okay, we got to talk about getting it disconnected. The Sewer Commission has been, throughout my tenure here, very accommodating and fair. So if you let them know you have the issue, you let them know you're working on it. If you come in and say, I'm still having problems doing it, you know, I'm having problems discharging it. Very good point. What do I do with the water now? I just can't go into the sanitary sewer. What can I do with it? Well, there's some options. You can tie into the storm drain system here in the town of Darien. That's available to you now. I have that authority to have that available to you. You can put it on site. You can discharge it to the woods if you have a larger piece of property. If you have a smaller piece of property, it may need to go into a Coltech system with an overflow system, but there are options that we can talk to you about it. We stop the fines as long as you start to talk to us so that we work out that system. What else? The other thing that does give me is the ability to map out wherever all the sump pumps are now. I can look at where the houses are that have these sump pumps, and I can identify now, with better information, why that pump station of mine runs for 24 hours longer. And now I can monitor it. If we see them being disconnected, was that one of the issues? Can I see a reduction in our use of those pump stations? And I can tell you that my yearly budget for the sewers is $4.6 million a year. That's my operating budget. I send 3.2 to the city of Stamford. Almost 70%, 65%. So again, this is a program that's going on for about five and a half years, trying to address the I&I. This is our next step. This is how we get more information from you folks. And I hope I kind of explained a lot with that. Hold on, this is Seth's show. I think there's a nice lady that has a question for you.
Well, excuse me, ma'am. I'll get there. I just want to make sure we have other members of the body. Yes, Lois. Okay, good. Well, then, fine. I'll acknowledge that.
Lois Schneider, District 1. In the Public Health and Safety meeting, we had a discussion on whether people had the right to let somebody in or not, or they automatically go into the house, or it was subject to the homeowner's discretion whether they want to let someone in. Could you please clarify?
I will do that. I had the opportunity to watch the meeting also. Some of my favorite people are on that committee. The sewer police, that we don't have those. Okay, we cannot go and knock on your door and walk in your house. You can deny us access. The part of the ordinance that says we have the authority to go in with authorized personnel still needs your approval for me to come on your property or go in your house. That cannot happen.
Is that what it says? Is that what the ordinance says?
Then maybe there's an opportunity that we have to.
But just, wait. Let me just clarify that. If you're right, you get one. That's not what the ordinance says. So just for clarity, what Rolf said is incorrect. The ordinance states that you have the authority to come in. So that really should be clear for the RTM. Thank you.
Miss, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I didn't have my badge on. Ed, since Laura Pesh Gray on F&B committee and District 6, since the town would be saving a lot of money by finding the people that are doing this knowingly or unknowingly, would the town help subsidize the cost of fixing and remediating this problem? with those individual homeowners, since you'd be saving millions of dollars by not having to clean the water?
That's a very good question, and I can put that to the sewer commission, and they will discuss that, but the first part of it is, I need to find out where they are. And I think part of the process of going through and learning about where things are, and there's an appeal process set up. There's a way to come in front of the sewer commission and plead your case if there's a special circumstance, and that would be one of the items that they could undertake if we saw that there was a concern with regards to the expenses, and that's a good. Right now, what you're seeing is we didn't increase the rate this year, based on some of the work that we did, and also based on the fact that it didn't rain as much this year as it did the previous year. You heard 30% of the flow was I&I. Last year's was 54%.
But I think that if there was a policy in place to help the cost, I think you'd have a lot more transparency and a lot more resolution. It wouldn't have to go on for 4 or 5 years.
That's a good point. And this, I let you know, the sewer commission, all 4 of the 5 members are here tonight listening.
Jim Cameron, District 4. If you will indulge me, I'm going to stay seated for a moment because I have a few things to say. First of all, Rolf was wrong. I hope you read the proposed ordinance. It was in your packet. If you didn't read it, how are you going to vote on it? Because we've heard 2 pieces of information from from committee chairs that seem contradictory. And yes, it does say that you can come into my house. And I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right that you're going to try to save money by imposing these costs on individual homeowners, 5,400 homeowners. You've already identified that you know the areas that are most flood prone, and you think most of the sump pump is working. I have a constituent on my street, an elderly woman living on a fixed income who has lived in a house for 35 years. She claims her sump pump has come on maybe 3 times in 35 years. She's looking at $500 to $1,000 to become into compliance with your ordinance, and she's not the problem. Now, I find the $250 attention-getting fine as proposed in the ordinance to be onerous and offensive. Worst of all, I think that there are people in this room on the RTM, let alone members of the public, who have no idea what this ordinance is going to mean to them and their pocketbook. Yes, there was a public hearing. It was duly warned. The Sewer Commission held it on September 9th. The public hearing lasted exactly 3 minutes. There was one person that got up, Mr. Oben from our Public Works Committee, and he spoke in favor of the ordinance. There was no publicity about the hearing. I think a lot of public hearings in this town are legal, but for show. There's one on Thursday you might want to lean or read up on before you find out what it's going to do to the parking in this town. So one of the things that Mr. Oben said at your public hearing was, I hope you reach out to the public and inform them as to what this ordinance is about. And trust me, I watch a lot of TV 79, and I've watched and I haven't seen that explanation come, aside from, yes, your cooperation working with all the various committees. So we are the representative town meeting. We are representing the people who are going to be paying these bills, whether they're part of the problem or not. I recommend that we vote against this ordinance. Thank you.
Jack Davis, District. I'm not telling you whether I should be for or against. I just want to make something clear from the accounting perspective. Sorry. All of the fees that we're talking about goes into a separate fund. This does not cost the town's operating budget. This is going into the sewer fund. So the people who are hooked up, the 5,400 plus, are in fact the ones who have paid for the capital projects, the ones who have paid for the overflow of what's going on. So I just want to make a distinction. This isn't an expense that is affecting the mill rate that we're having. This is a completely separate fund. So it's not that the town's saving any money here. It's that those of us who do hook up into the sewer line, we're saving money. And that's why they were able to not increase rates this year. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about, simply from an accounting perspective. Number two, Jim, I hear you. If in fact there's a concern that the ordinance currently states that they can gain entrance, we can easily amend that aspect to simply say, with permission of the homeowner. So if we do that, would that meet what the concerns are? With that,
No, because it doesn't solve the problem of the little old lady living on a fixed income being asked to spend $1,000 for a sump pump that only comes on 3 times in 3 decades.
Well, I would agree with that, and I would agree that most people who have older systems have no clue, which is why they're asking for pictures, because that will tell what's going on. Anyone who's new, since this ordinance has been around, not just last year, it's been around for a while, so licensed plumbers should have known what the law was.
Licensed plumbers are going to make a lot of money, and I'm not sure there's enough hours, billable hours, for licensed plumbers to get into compliance with 5,400, let's say half of them. Let's say 2,500 homes have sump pumps. 2,500 homes, 6 months for compliance. That's a lot of plumbing time. Good luck finding a plumber when your toilet doesn't work.
So rather than, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be debating, rather than sitting here and voting down an ordinance, there were, what I hear, 2 issues that were raised. Number 1, the entrance into the house without having approval. Number 2, whether or not the sewer commission is willing to provide some subsidy to those who are in financial need for what goes on. I know there's no fine going on as long as you're working with the sewer commission, and they're working on that. So are we proposing, or I would propose, rather, that we table it until you have the answers on that and bring it back at our next meeting, rather than voting something down at this time, which, let's get it solved as opposed to voting down.
I will second your motion to table.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion to table, there's no further debate. We go straight to vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Couldn't hear me. Yes, excuse me, the motion was a motion to table this item. And it was seconded. Yes, it was. Okay? So there is no further debate on it. We go to a vote on the motion to table. Okay? So those in favor of a motion to table, please rise. Okay, opposed? Well, no, I'll let you, I'm sorry, our vote collectors may have not had enough time there.
For district chairs, if you're recording the vote, please record this vote under the resolution on your voting sheet, please. No, this would be 2522, a vote to table the resolution.
Opposed? Those opposed to the motion to table? And abstentions. The effect of the motion to table, just from a parliamentary standpoint, is that it can be brought back up in any future meeting But this motion to table would expire on November 4 when the next election takes place and the composition of this body changes. So you could bring it back up in, well, theoretically at the annual meeting, but clearly, most likely, when we do work, will be in January. You could bring it back up, and maybe some of the questions would be solved then.
The RTM does work in November, and it does work in December. So this gives an opportunity
It
for
could
us
come
to
back then,
address.
yeah.
So it can come back as soon as November, because all the committees are still in force until such time that the members are replaced. So we've done that in the past. We can see this in November, or we can see it in December during the state of the town. So, just saying, we'll see this again.
All right. I need to, before we proceed, we've got to have a result on the motion to table. It looked like it passed, but. Next will be Mr. Zagra. Okay. Oh, thanks. Right there. Okay, the motion to table, the sewer ordinance 25-22 passed 60 in favor, 7 opposed, 2 abstentions. So the next item is presentation from Mr. Zagrodsky on the town debt. We need a couple of minutes? Okay. We're dealing with a, thank you. We're dealing with a systems situation, which I understand will be resolved shortly.
I'm looking for a volunteer.
Yeah, right. The item 2521, zoning ordinance as amended, passed 69 in favor, 1 abstention.
That's going to sound
Okay. Okay, I won't take long. So the purpose of this presentation is to give a bit of an update on the debt presentation that I gave to the RTM in February of this year. Given the concerns that were mentioned before about our rising debt levels, I wanted to give you some background on the bonding process, just as an educational matter, and then let you all know where things stand at the moment as these numbers will show you. So I'm going to do a couple of things. If I can get this slide to advance. Okay. A couple of projects, a couple of things we're going to talk about. I'm going to give some background on the bonding process and how that works, talk a little bit about some terminology and some of the key players that you've probably heard about but may not know how all that works. And then I'll give an overview of the town debt as to where it stands right now, sources of new debt, and then implications for the town in terms of debt service and our credit rating. So let's start off with bonding and some background information. So If you think about the town's capital spending requests, they really come from the policy-making boards in the town, and that's the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education. For the Board of Selectmen, examples of that are Great Island, Public Works garage renovation, Pear Tree Point Beach, which you all just passed. These are all major capital projects, and they're capital projects that we would bond. The Board of Education does the same thing, like the Oxford School, renovations like HHR, but we also bond things such as roof repairs. It's important to know that in terms of process, the way we do this, that those project costs and the timing of those projects are incorporated in the town's 5-year capital plan, which you've seen before. But when those projects come up and it's time to move forward with them, we will introduce them into the budget process. And so kudos to Jack and Davis and Sarah Newman, who worked out the criteria for making sure that we stick with the budgeting process for all of our capital projects and try to do that in January, February when we do our budgets. If we do have to have an off-cycle request, there are certain criteria that have to be met to do that, like we have to do it right now in response to a disaster or there's some other timing-related issue. So in terms of the approval process for this, keep in mind that, again, Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, those are the policy bodies for the town, and what they're going to do is they'll determine when it's time to proceed with a town or a school project. They will develop the case for action to try to sell that project and convince everyone that we need to do it. They'll also provide the details, the scope of the project, the lowest cost bids, when they expect to have those projects done. And then, of course, they're going to approve the project, which both the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education would do. And then the Board of Selectmen will recommend a bonding resolution to the Board of Finance. So next up, the Board of Finance will play a different role. What they're going to decide is whether the project is affordable to the town and makes financial sense. They review current indebtedness. They'll take a look at our debt service, and they'll take a look at taxpayer impact. Their job is not to debate the merits of whether to do the project. Their job is to debate whether it's prudent to do so from a financial standpoint. They'll also consider things like funding options. So should we bond the project? Should we pay for it out of fund balance? And then they will recommend a bonding resolution to this body. And then finally, the RTM, you all have the final sort of review role in all of this. You're going to consider the project merits, the cost overall. You'll have different committees look at it. F&B will always take a look at it from a financial standpoint, but depending on the project, you'll have different committees that look at it. And importantly, you come up with not just the final bond authorization, but you'll appropriate the funds. So what happens after that? So after the RTM approves a bond resolution, the appropriation authorizes the town to begin project expenditures once the 10-day referendum period passes. So that's a provision in our ordinances that says if someone doesn't like a proposed spending authorization and appropriation, as long as it's more than $50,000, they can seek a referendum to have that decision overturned. Now, the bar is pretty high for that. You have to get something like 5% of the total electors of the town to sign a petition, and then 25% of those electors must vote, and a majority of them must vote to overturn it. So it's a complicated process. We've not had one of those referendums since I've been in government. Now, once that process has expired, then the town or the Board of Education, they can start spending money on this. And by that point, we won't have bonded proceeds, so the money is actually going to come out of fund balance. But when the bonds go through, then the bond funds will actually reimburse the town reserves. That's why we can get started on projects right away, even though the bond itself will not have actually been put in place. Now, keep in mind that a bond resolution, it authorizes the option, but not the obligation to bond. And if you read the bond authorization language, it says that we can borrow up to a particular amount, but we can decide that we don't want to bond something. It's not required that we bond the entire amount. You'll notice, though, that sometimes we'll do a bond authorization and the actual bonding doesn't take place for a while. And the reason for that is we want to accumulate enough projects that need to be bonded before we actually pull that trigger. It is expensive to do a bond. For example, one of the things that every bond, every time we go out to market for bonding, the ratings agencies will re-rate the town, and that costs us about $50,000 every time we do that. So you don't want to go out to market to do small bonds. You want to kind of let them accumulate for a while until we get to a critical mass, then go out and do it so that we don't have to go through that expensive re-rating process every time. So the idea is that You guys have appropriated the money, and then the town finance director is going to say, well, we've accumulated enough bonding needs, and then we're going to go out to market. Just as a way of calibration, the next time we plan to go out to market is probably in April of this year, and that's going to convert the bond anticipation notes for Great Island, as well as, if you all approve it, something like the Coons lot and a few other things. But that way we'll have enough bonding activity, if you will, to justify going to market and minimizing the cost of issuances. Okay. So now it's time to execute that bond. At this point, the Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, and the RTM have no further role in the process. Your job is done at that point. But the Board of Finance does have other things to do. So it's going to make the final determination as to whether to bond or not change the appropriation, just how we're going to pay for it, whether it's a bond or cash or something else. They'll decide the bond type. Most of the time we issue general obligation bonds, but sometimes when you're not sure how the property is going to be used, as in the case of Great Island, we'll issue what are called bond anticipation notes, or bands. Those are basically temporary financing that we put in place that's paid interest only. There's no amortization. It allows us to think about what we're going to do next before we put in the permanent financing. They'll also set up bond duration. All of our bonds right now are 20-year bonds. The only 30-year bond we have is actually for Great Island itself, but we do have the opportunity to vary the duration of the bonds depending on the expected life of the assets that we're funding. And then, of course, bond structure. Right now, the current Board of Finance posture is we'll put in place long-term financing. It'll be interest only for 2 years, and then it will be principal and interest after that. 2 years of interest is actually as long as you can go. You can't go any further than that on permanent bonding. And then finally, you'll get to bond, the point where we actually put the bond out for sale. That process starts about 90 days before the auction, and that'll include things like the re-rating by the agencies, the preparation of all the documentation, the bond prospectus, something that's called the operating statement for the town. Just to give you a sense, this is a bonding that we did in February 2022 for 29 million in general obligation bonds. There is a lot of documentation that's associated with this, and our bond counsel and others help prepare this material, but it is a complicated process. So just a quick note, you've probably heard us talk about bond counsel and our bond financial advisor. I don't know if you've talked to these folks. They're very competent and they've worked with us for a long time. Pullman and Comley, they do really all of our bond legal work. And so Marie Phelan, who's been with us and helped us for a very long time, they'll provide a lot of legal and strategic guidance, not just for individual bond issuances, but for really all town debt matters. And her help and her team's help, they'll help us be clear about what expenditures can be spent in a bond with bonded funds, or whether we want to pursue taxable or tax-exempt financing. They'll also oversee the compliance that we have to have for unspent bond funds. Anytime you get bonding done, you have to spend that money within a certain period of time. That's why sometimes you'll see, for example, HHR, we're not bonding it all at once. You'll bond it in tranches so that we're sure that those bonded funds will be spent on that work before we get the next set of bonding. And then they'll, of course, prepare and review all the bond documentation that I just showed you. We also have another group called Munistat. Mark Chapman, I've known for a long time. He's more of the numbers guy, and so he'll do things like developing bond amortization and structure schedules, so what your payments would be at different interest rates, at different durations, and helps us think that through. He'll also support the Moody's rating review. Keep in mind that most of their work is to simply update documents they already have in place, but he plays a key role in all of that. Then, of course, he manages the actual sale process, and when the day comes for it to be sold, we're required to take the lowest bid, and like we are most things. And when that happens, it's actually the lowest interest rate is what we're looking for. So in other words, the buyers of these bonds, who's going to bid the lowest interest rate, which means that'll cost us the least amount of money. There's some other complications to that I won't go into, but when we have that final bidder, we'll take that bid, we'll have some signatures, and then the bond closes about 2 weeks after that sale. So it's about a 90-day process from when the finance director says we're ready to go with a set of projects that we want to bond, to actually get through that whole process, bond documentation, ratings reviewed, actually go out to market and sale day, and then to get to that close is about a 3-month process to make that work. So we are very well served by these professionals, by the way. They help us keep on top of things in ways too numerous to tell you, but I've worked with them for a long time. We are very well served by those professionals. Some people have asked about our bond rating. Right now, Darien, we just get bond ratings from Moody's. There are other groups, Fitch and S&P, that also do municipal bond ratings, but we just work with Moody's. There's multiple agencies, and as I said before, they'll review us on at least an annual basis if we don't do a bond issuance, but they will re-review and re-rate the town anytime we go to market with new bonds. And as I said, that's a $50,000 process, and we don't want to do that any more often than we have to. They have criteria for determining all this, and I'll go through them briefly here. One is leverage, which is how much leverage does the town carry? How much debt do we have? And they've got criteria for assessing that. And they'll also assess the financial performance of the town. So how much is our fund balance as a percentage of our budgeted revenues? And then how much is our liquidity as a ratio? Those are all areas that we can manage pretty closely. These other 2 points down here, institutional framework, which really has to do with the relationship of state government to the town, and whether as a town we have the freedom to raise revenue or we face some kind of restrictions. We don't really have any of those right now, and it's a pretty stable situation at the state level. And then the economy. One of the things about this town is this is one of the richest towns in the United States. And our economy, as measured by resident income, the value of our real estate, economic growth of the town is so strong, we actually get extra credit for that in the rating process. But that's probably the most important thing. But the things that we cover really are at the top: leverage and financial performance. And the question is does that, does the leverage now that we're facing really affect our rating? I will say no, but I will explain more of that in a minute. And then the last point here, let's say we did get a credit rating downgrade. What you see here are the different levels of ratings from Moody's. You can get AA, single, or AAA like we are now, AA and single A, and there's some gradations of that. But what you see on this page is that the interest rate difference, these are approximate rates I pulled yesterday in terms of what 20-year bonds, for example, right now the rates on those bonds, 3.85% for AAA, 4.05 for AA, and 4.30 for single A. Basically, even if we got a downgrade, we're only looking at 20 basis points interest rate difference. So we don't want a downgrade. I don't think we'll get one, but in terms of impact on our cost of borrowing, it's actually going to be quite minimal if something like that ever happens. So let's talk about all that now in the context of the current debt situation. So I asked some questions before when I did this in February, and let's get an update on that. So how have our debt levels trended over time, and what projects are contributing to our current debt load? So I showed this chart before, and what you see here is how our debt's trended over the years. So starting in 2022 and then 23 through 25, it's grown a lot, 280% higher than it was in June of 2017. That's a lot. There is one thing to note in here is that I've included in these debt figures the bond anticipation notes we have for Great Island. We're going to convert those to permanent financing later this year. But what you can see on this chart is it gives you a sense of how this debt has grown over time and what it was at the end of June earlier this year. So what are the contributors to that debt level? So you see on the left there's the $62 million from June of 17. We borrowed $7 million for Highland Farms, Ox Ridge at $48 million. And some of you may ask, well, I thought that project was about $57 million. That's true. The reason it's less is that we did receive some state grants to cover the cost of that project, like we will for future school renovation, but also there's some bond premium built into that, again, that reduced our borrowings to about $48 million. We've got about $76 million outstanding for the Henley Holmes Royal project, call it $90 million for Great Island, and some other gets it up to $301 million. And then over that period from June of 17 to June of 25, we've paid down debt by about $64 million, which gets us to the $236 you saw on that other page. So in terms of just what's sitting in June of 17, back at that time, we were still carrying debt at that time from the high school and Tokenique Elementary School, the police department, and a few others, but that's where that $62 million came from in June, and a lot of that even has been paid off since then. Okay, so then the next question, what additional debt might we expect to take on in the next few years? Additional new projects, additions to existing projects, and what might those be? So this is an update of presentation of the data that I gave in February. So let's take a look at some of these categories. First thing you'll notice at the top, I've done this not just from 20 26 to 2032 like I had last time. This analysis goes now out to 2040, so we have a longer-term view. So the first is our fire vehicles. We're estimating $2 million each and doing one every year over that time period. Flooding, we talked about this before. That's the Salt Box and Grove Street projects with the state grant of $500,000. I'm still forecasting that's about $10 million based on what Public Works is telling me. We won't have firm numbers on those projects till we put them out to bid. Pear Tree Point, we've just done that. I had 7 last February, and so that's at 9 right now. The Coons lot, I've built that into this analysis. That's our accepted offer, about $5 million. You note that I've took out Weed Beach, which we had in there for $2 million, so that's gone. And then the other that I've got there for $33 million, that's basically the sum total of all the town capital spending that we typically bond per year, and that's kind of a run rate, and I just said I'm going to project that out through 2040, and let's see what we get. And then finally, for Great Island, I had 50 last February. My guess is that from the Board of Finance discussion and probably some discussion with some of you, there's a real interest in slowing that down even further, and this $2 million that I've got here really does the early access for just parking, which is what the Board of Finance was looking for, and that Northern Causeway Road access. So it'll solve the problem of getting a vehicular access for folks with mobility issues, but it doesn't carry it any further in terms of renovating, for example, the root cellar at the greenhouse to put in the bathrooms or anything like that. So I think you can get all that done, plus repairs to a few buildings for about $2 million. We're not ready to come with a formal plan on that yet, but that's what I've got as a placeholder for what we'll spend on Great Island for quite some time. Not to say we can't add to it, but I think that's the minimum that needs to be done now to get people onto the island who require vehicular access. So all told, that'll be about $88 million through 2040 for town bonding. For the schools, we got HHR, another $2 million, that's what's remaining. I did communicate with Dr. Byrne, who's our interim superintendent. He spoke with architects about what it would take to modify and renovate the Middlesex Middle School. He's forecasting to be between $75 and $90 million to get that work done. They're going to have to replace the HVAC systems. There's a lot of work to do to Middlesex to get it to the standards that we're having the HHR elementary schools renovated to. I've put in $75 million. That's probably at the high end because I've tried to take out a forecast for what grants would be and maybe bond premiums associated with that. I'd be surprised if the net figure to the town ended up being higher than $75 million. And then there's roof repairs, there's other capitalized maintenance that we forecasted for the schools. So all in all, $111 million through 2040 for the schools, for a total of about, call it $200 million in additional borrowing, from the 236 that you see here. So what does that mean in terms of additional debt and debt service requirements, and how does that look like? What does that look like over time? So just a few caveats on how I did this. We're assuming 20-year debt for all the future bonding. The same structure I talked about before, interest only for 2 years, followed by principal and interest. We're going to use current interest rates in the forecast. I've made no attempt to forecast something different. We're going to convert those bands I mentioned to amortizing debt next year, and I'm not assuming any refinancing, which I did a lot of when I was on the Board of Finance, but we could get some of that could reduce our cost. And just keep in mind, there's cost uncertainty. There's inflation. We've seen a lot of that in some of the projects that we've done, and so I've made no assumptions for that. There's timing uncertainty. We don't know when some of these projects might start, and there may be some investments that I'm not forecasting here, but this was the best I could come up with. So this is what that debt profile would look like. So the Middlesex School, and talking to the superintendent, he put in as a placeholder that we would start that project in 2030. And so over 2030, 31, 32, that's when the bonding for that project would be layered in. So you see that 236 there on the left where we are right now. It gets up to about $316 million, taking into account that project, before our debt levels start to come down and get back to something normal. And you can see that process will start right after the middle school is finished. And then over time, our debt levels would start to calm down and get back, start to trend back down. It's going to be a long time before we get our debt back to what it was a few years ago, but in time that can happen. Now, what about debt service as a percentage of the general fund budget? Well, for last year that ended in June, it was about 6.2%. That's going to grow to a high of about 12.4%, twice as much as what it is right now. This is assuming that the rest of the budget grows at about 4% per year, and you layer in the debt service for the debt that I just showed you on the previous slide. So again, it's going to grow. It'll start to come down. It'll start to get more under control, but it's not something that's going to come back down to what it was for quite some time. One thing I would point out, you're going to be talking about the Coons parking lot later on, and one of the issues raised as to whether we could spend the $5 million on that lot. The thing that that's driving our debt is Great Island and $250 million in schools. We're spending $100 million on Henley Holmes Royal. We spent $60 million, call it on Ox Ridge, that's $160, and we're going to spend another $90 on Middlesex, call it, $200 to $250 million is what we're spending on schools, depending on, again, state grants and all of that. So that's what's actually changing our debt picture, not the small stuff. And if you were to just say, let's not do the Coons lot, you can see that debt service as a percentage of the general fund budget in 2040 would go from 10.5% to 10.4%. My message to you on something like the $5 million Coons lot in the scheme of this analysis and this challenge we have in front of us is immaterial. It doesn't matter, okay? So in terms of budget impact, I thought I would just throw up some, and we're almost done here, just throw up some numbers here to show you what the compound annual growth rate in some of our spending is with this layered in debt. So what I did was pick two time periods. One was 2023 through 2034, which are kind of the peak levels of debt growth. And you can see our total annual budget, less debt service, it's just over 4% because I've got 3 years where I've got previous year's debt, and that was a little higher than 4%, but it assumes 4% going out through 2040. So you can see annual budget, less debt service, 4.19% for that period, and then up through 2040, 4.12%, so basically 4%. Then you say, how much is debt service growing? Well, over that period from 2023 to 2034, it grows at almost 10% per year, okay, to start to cover all this debt. But if you extend it out over 2040, that drops to about 6.6%. So again, rising and will come down over time. And then, of course, the total budget, instead of a 4.19% budget, it's 4.66%. The reason I show that is keep in mind our debt service, is growing to 12%, but that's 12% of the budget. That means 88% of the budget is not debt service. And so we are paying more debt service. It's taking up more of our budget, but it's not 50% of our budget. It's not 70% of our budget. It's 12% of our budget. So let me wrap up by saying, does this prospective level of debt threaten our credit rating, and what are the implications for prioritizing capital spending? My last two slides. So there's no record that we can find that Darien has ever had a credit rating of less than AAA. I think that's important to keep in mind. And assuming nothing else changes, and I spoke with Mark Chapman today, his general view is that our debt load would have to get up closer to $500 million in his judgment, and he does Moody's ratings all day, for our credit rating to be at risk. And you see from even this maximal view, we're not going to get anywhere close to that. And as I said before, because of other factors that weigh so heavily in our favor, namely the economics of this town, there's going to have to be a lot wrong with the world before our credit rating is degraded or downgraded for any reason, certainly not the debt levels that I'm showing here. So in my judgment, and again, based on talking to the professionals, I don't think this borrowing, and I feel very strongly about this, is going to affect our credit rating. That said, one of the things we'll need to continue to monitor is our fund balance as a percentage of budgeted revenues. That's an important factor in terms of credit rating agencies' views on the town. And so something that we should all pay attention to, and I know the Board of Finance will do that as well. So that's that. I guess my final slide is just to talk about prioritizing capital for the town. And I'd say, as I said before, that it was school projects and Great Island that changed our debt trajectory. It was not anything else. It's not the other small bonded projects. It's none of those things. So don't think that you've got to turn those projects down because you're worried about how much something that cost $5 million is, because they don't make any difference in the scheme of what I just described. Our debt levels are high, and as I said, though, they're going to get higher, and there's not really anything we can do about that. You can delay something like the Middlesex renovation, but people move here for their schools. They're looking for those schools to be 21st century physical properties, and it's going to be important that we provide those schools to the parents and the students who learn in those schools. And so The Middlesex renovation is something that's going to have to be done. We might delay it a year or two, but delaying it for 10 years or 20 years and not doing it, I would say, based on what I'm hearing from folks, is not going to be an option. So we're going to have to really think hard about that and get the best deal we can for it. But that's something we're going to have to do, in my judgment. But as I also said, by the time that's finished, I don't see any massively large capital projects that we're absolutely going to have to do by 2040. Maybe a renovation on the high school, but keep in mind, by the way, that building's 20 years old this year. I don't see that as requiring the same kind of renovation that something like Middlesex has because of the standards with which that building was built. But if you look at everything else, it's all a choice. We don't have to spend any more money on Great Island. There's a ton of things that we could spend money on, but if they're worried about our debt levels, as a town, we can come in and say, we're going to hold this and hold the line for this time period while our debt levels get back to something more normal. And then finally, I know everybody's worried about debt, and nobody likes to pay higher taxes. I totally get that. But we're not broke, okay? And so I don't want you to feel from this presentation that it's okay to let our town assets degrade. We all live here for a reason, and it's important for us to recognize that the money that we're spending is going to make the town better. By spending money on our schools, we reinforce the reputation of this town as having Class A, some of the best schools in the United States. People want to move here for that. By buying Great Island, that was not a unanimous decision by any means. I spent some time out there today. It's a magical place. It's going to get quietly and slowly better, but it's going to add materially to the appeal of this town, especially once we get parking in place. That was a clear, good investment for the town. You should feel good about that. The rest of these things are not contributing to the debt situation that we see today. Don't let those assets degrade. It's okay to spend money to make sure that we have the assets that people in this town have come to expect. So that's all I have to say. I'd be happy to answer any questions now. I don't want to have this go on too late. Or if anybody's got something they want to talk about, doors always open upstairs. I'd love to come and talk to you about it. But hopefully you found this informative. And I take this communication very seriously, and so when I see these things, I want to make sure that you have a chance to wallow in the data and see it as I see it. I like to provide some educational background that I hope is helpful to you. And anytime you've got questions, just like Jim's Ask the First Selectman series, we can do it through that. Feed those questions to me. I'll come by and talk to you again and answer whatever questions you've got in the presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. That's a lot in a short period of time, but it's something we have to keep in the back of our mind, keep an eye on, and also look to see how the debt levels contribute to changes in the mill rate. But succinct and very detailed, gives us a pretty good picture in a blurb very quickly about how our debt structure looks going forward. That's great. It's a lovely presentation. Next item of business is appropriation and bonding resolution for $5.2 million on the purchase of 37 West Avenue. And speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Finance and Budget Chair. It's always tough to follow that presentation. Before I move this resolution, I want to explain the process we will be implementing. We are sort of in a catch-22 situation. For those who have read Joseph Heller's book or might have seen the movie with Alan Arkin, I know I'm dating us, the legislative body of the town is responsible to approve 2 resolutions with the town purchase of real property. One is for the purchase of the real property, in this case 37 West Avenue. Another is for the appropriation and funding of said property. So here's the catch-22, is that one cannot approve the purchase of property without stating how we're going to fund it. Nor can it approve an appropriation and funding source without the formal approval of the purchase of the real property. a true chicken and egg situation. So we had discussions with bond counsel and our legal counsel, and it was recommended that we combine the two resolutions. So I will be moving the bond council resolution for the appropriation and funding, and then move to amend the resolution with the resolution to purchase 37 West Avenue. That was agreed to with bond council as the way to move forward. The F&B committee did so in our meeting, and the Public Works Committee did so in theirs. We will ultimately vote on the bond resolution as amended. So here goes. I move 2523 appropriating $5.2 million for the purchase of the parking lot and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $5.2 million to meet said appropriation. Do I have a second? We have Pierre as the second. If there's no objection, I will waive the reading of that resolution. I will now move to amend 2523 with the addition of the resolution to consider and approve the real property known as 35 West Avenue, Darien, Connecticut. I'm sorry, 37 West Avenue. And for this one, I'm going to read just to make sure that people in the public know what we're doing. Whereas the town of Darien has the opportunity to purchase a parking lot consisting of approximately 2.01 acres of real property located at 37 West Avenue and adjacent to the Darien train station, and whereas the Board of Selectmen has approved the acquisition of said property, and whereas under the appropriate provisions of charter, in particular Section 48F, the representative town meeting has the authority to approve the sale or acquisition of real property by the town, and whereas said property is currently owned by the West Avenue Parking LLC, and principals of which are members of the Coons family, now and therefore be it resolved that the representative town meeting of the town of Darien hereby approves and authorizes the purchase of approximately 2.01 acres of land located at 37 West Avenue, and authorizes the first selectman to take the necessary steps and execute necessary documents to acquire said property. Do I have a second on the amendment?
Okay. Not close enough? Okay. Any debate on the amendment? Then, without objection, what I would do is ask you to vote on this by acclamation, because in a sense, you're going to get a chance to vote on it again when we vote the whole package. So, is there any objection to doing this by acclamation? Okay, then all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hear none. The amendment passes, and we'll now address the item as amended.
Thank you all for not delaying this so we can watch the baseball game. Okay, on to the F&B report. This purchase is for approximately 290 parking spots on 2.01 acres of property adjacent to the Darien train station. The purchase cost is $5,130,000, an additional amount of $70,000 being capitalized into the bond. They are approximately, and I'll give the round numbers, a survey deposit for approximately $5,000, appraisal for $1,000, the environmental phase 1 for $3,000, closing costs for about $40,000, estimated bond issuance for about $10,000, and other reimbursable expenses for approximately $11,000. The committee reviewed financials presented. John says that's what we do. Debt service was projected to be approximately $410,000 for 20-year debt, after the first 2 years of the town paying interest only, of approximately $216,000. or approximately $321,000 in years 2 through 30 if we're doing 30-year debt, with the first 2 years interest only of approximately $223,000. There were 4 examples given. $10 fee for 20-year bonds, potentially covering 68% of the cost, the debt cost. $10 in 30-year bonds, we don't cover costs. $5 for 20-year bonds, we don't cover costs. $5 for 30-year bonds, we don't cover costs. Honestly, when we looked at this, the future price mix of maintaining $10 a day is unknown, as is the mix of weekly, monthly, annual is unknown, and we cannot confirm or deny any of the financials presented. In addition, the models had no fee increases over the 20 years, which is what the Board of Finance stated they would be doing. On a positive note raised at our committee, currently staff leaves that lot at about noon or 12:30. Thus, folks could be parking for free. Upon the town owning the lot, our parking staff will be patrolling up to 4 p.m. Thus, the town could see an increase in tickets or parking revenue. This fund, we will understand, will go directly into the general fund. Under the 20-year debt, the anticipated $10 a day parking revenue will cover the interest only for the first 2 years. As I said, the $5 a day will not cover the interest only. The Board of Finance also discussed at their meeting 3 years of interest only, as there was anticipation that a ban may be issued for the first year of this debt. Further discussion by the Board of Finance will be taking place in February and March, where they'll actually be determining what the structure of our debt is. So a couple of statements. Even though I know I'm the Finance and Budget Committee, throw those finances out of the window. This is not being purchased for the return on investment. Seldom does government purchase land for a return on investment. We will know that we will cover some of the costs. The committee discussed the reasons to purchase 37 West Avenue beyond the financials. Potentially undesirable development in our town if there is an external purchase of land by either the state or developer. Purchase of land allows the town to retain control of the parcel and its future use. This provides approximately 290 parking spaces now controlled by the town. There's no place to replace this in town downs if we lose them, if somebody else owns it and decides they're not doing a parking lot. That represents 15% of our parking. Purchase allows not just more parking, but a better managed lot. We looked at the comps were reasonable. So even though I said it's not being done for financial purposes, it's being done for a lot of other purposes. Sometimes government does things for the general welfare of population. This is one of them. Just like Pear Tree Point, this is a very defensive purchase for us at a very fair price. The Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously in favor of the purchase of 37 West Avenue as amended and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Now, speaking on behalf of Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee, Amy Zebedee.
Good evening again. Amy Zavatakis, District 5, Chair of Planning and Zoning and Housing. Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee discussed the proposed purchase of 37 West Avenue, also known as the Coons parking lot, at our special meeting on October 16th, 2025, with 10 members of our 14-person committee present. We were joined by Town Council, and we did spend part of our meeting in executive session discussing the purchase contract, the title search that Council had performed, the environmental review that Council oversaw, and the independent appraisal that was done, which does support the purchase price. Our committee felt that this parking lot is an important acquisition for the town. It's important for the town to control the future use and development of this very centrally located parcel. We did ask the town attorney to confirm that there was nothing that would impede the town from using and developing the property as it sees fit in the future. There are no easements across the property for drainage or otherwise. We also discussed the Phase 1 environmental review, which showed that the property had never been used for any purpose that would lead to a reason to believe that there's any contamination or buried oil tanks on the property, so no Phase 2 search was needed. We felt that this was a very clean parcel with no restrictions on future development. That said, as a group, we understand the current plan is to continue to use the land for parking for the near term. But it was very important to us in supporting the purchase that we know that the lot could be used by the town for other purposes. And similarly, that it was important to purchase the property because a developer could use it for almost any purpose, and therefore it's important for the town to control this parcel. We do anticipate that any future changes in use or planned development for the parcel by the town would come back before the RTM. Planning and Zoning Commission approved the mandatory referral confirming that the purchase complies with the Town Plan of Conservation and Development at their meeting on October 14th. And Planning and Zoning and Housing Committee voted unanimously in favor of the proposed purchase of 37 West Avenue at the our meeting on October 16th and recommends the same to the full RTM.
Thank you, Amy. Now speaking on behalf of Public Works Committee, Ralph Oben.
Ralph Oben, District 4, Public Works Committee Chair. During the Board of Selectmen meeting of October 6th, the Board of Selectmen approved the resolution authorizing the purchase of 2.01 acres parking lot located at 37 West Avenue, Darien, and the appropriation authorization of bonding in the amount of $5,200,000. Resolution 25-23 of the representative town meeting of the town of Darien to appropriate $5,200,000 for the purchase of a parking lot and issuance of bonds in the amount of $5,200,000 to meet said appropriation. The RTM Public Works Committee met on October 23rd to discuss the purchase authorization and bonding authorization of the Coons parking lot located at 37 West Avenue. There was trepidation over having to consider another town purchase and its effect on town debt and property taxes. However, an opportunity purchase such as this seems to never come along at the right time. Most members felt that acquiring the property carried positive benefits for the town, first being the continuation of parking availability to train commuters and town residents, which could be expanded later. Second, the property generates revenue that will contribute to offset the cost of operation and purchase financing. Third, acquiring the property will keep it out of developers' hands. And fourth, the cost of operating the lot will be absorbed by Public Works and Parking Authority with reasonable impact to the operating budget. Fifth, the town has enjoyed the use of the lot in support of numerous events at Tilly Pond, which provides a greater good for the town of Darien. Sixth, should we later decide not to keep the property, it can be put on the market with the possibility of a capital gain. The point being that all these possibilities are lost if the town does not purchase the property. With 7 of 14 Public Works Committee members present at a special meeting held on October 23rd. The committee voted by a margin of 6-1 to approve the amended bond purchase resolution for the Coons parking lot at 37 West Avenue. The dissenting vote objected to the off-cycle expenditure, too much money being spent, and does not align with town strategy.
Thank you, Ralph. Other committees? No. Town officials? Members of the body? Debate? Electors of the town? Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Okay, and opposed? And abstentions? Okay, as we're counting up the votes here, we'll move on to 25-24, approve rates and changes to town parking regulations. Speaking on behalf of Public Works, Rolf Hoban. A lot of work today, Ralph.
Rolf Hoban, District 4, Public Works Committee Chair. During the Board of Selectmen meeting of October 6th, the Board of Selectmen approved the resolution for the adoption of initial parking fees and issuance of periodic parking passes at the parking lot located at 37 West Avenue, Darien. I move the resolution of the representative town meeting of the town of Darien approving the adoption of initial daily parking fees and the issuance of periodic parking passes at 37 West Avenue. May I have a second? Ian, thank you. Without objection, I will waive the reading of the resolution. This vote, if approved, would allow for the parking lot at 37 West Avenue to be integrated into the existing town ordinance. Chapter 100 of Connecticut General Statutes directs that the legislative body is responsible to set the initial fee for parking facilities acquired through municipal bond funding. The legislative body for the town of Darien is the representative town meeting. Parking Authority has recommended an initial daily parking fee of $10 for daily parking. The resolution also authorizes the issuance of weekly, monthly, quarterly, and/or annual passes for the parking lot at 37 West Avenue to be subsequently determined by the Parking Authority, which is essentially the Board of Selectmen. With 7 of the 14 Public Works Committee members present at a special meeting held on October 23rd, all members voted in favor of the resolution for the initial parking fee of $10 for the parking lot at 37 West Avenue. With unanimous vote, the committee recommends the same to the RTM.
Thank you, Rolf. Speaking on behalf of Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee. Excellent report, Ralph. We have nothing to add to that. The committee voted unanimously in favor of this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Other committees? Town officials? Debate from the body? Yes, please.
Priscilla Wong, District 1. If the Board of Selectmen chooses to issue daily, weekly, or monthly permits, will it be for the entire parking lot or just a portion of the parking lot? And then leave maybe a daily rate for the other part of the lot?
Okay. Jack?
Hence why we couldn't do financials. We don't know. There has been comments made to the Board of Selectmen and the Parking Authority, being one and the same, that a sizable number of those lots should remain to be daily parking because a lot of people rely on that. People who have not come off the wait list, as well as day travelers into the city. So we are hopeful, and we will continue, and I suggest that people go to the public hearing on the 30th where they will be discussing this. This is what Jim said. Show up, have your voices heard. We do not want it to just become everybody off the wait list and leave the rest of us looking for spaces, all right? So I can't give you an answer of what the mix will be, but our voices are a sizable number of the lots in the Coons lot be for daily parking.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Again, I know this seems to be kind of an amorphous process, but do we know if it's going
The
to
name,
be...
you just
Dan
named-
Guller, District 4.
Okay.
Do we know if this is going to be run similar to the other lots in that it will be no charge evenings and weekends?
Yep. Jack?
Okay, what I left out of my report. So they're currently looking to have the parking app be able to handle two rates, one for Coons and one for the other lots where you'll be identifying what lot you're in, as you currently do in some of the other lots where they can understand who did the parking. I think that we don't know yet until they have that, but the process will still be sometime in January. They're speaking, the app people said they can do that it will be done by apps. We have the current employee that they have willing to stay on through the end of December. We'll have to see if there's an extension on that. But at the end of the day, again, I'm sounding like a broken record, show up on the 30th, have your voices heard. But other than that, it will be managed like the other lots, but the pricing may be different.
Okay. Yes, Lois.
Lois Schneider, District 1, for the record. It's really for the record. The Coons lot allows for overnight parking, and it allows you to do a certain number of days. I want to make sure that gets on the record for any discussions with the Board of the Parking Authority. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Jack.
It's dangerous when they ask me to read regulations. One of the things that I suggested that they do in the modification is that in the current regulations, they have the timing that you can park in some of the lots. Coons currently allows overnight. I suggested that they put no limitations on the Coons lot when they went through with the regulations that they're presenting on the 30th. As such, you might be able to have the same thing, free parking in the weekends, in the evenings, and I don't know whether or not you're going to still do overnight parking, but they haven't ruled against it. So they're going to vote on the regulations right after the public hearing. The Parking Authority Board of Selectmen will be doing that.
Okay, thank you. Others? Seeing none. Electors of the town?
Krista McNamara, 69 St. Nicholas Road. Did either of the committees address the difference between the $5 daily fee and the $10 daily fee for this lot? As to why this is 10 and the other town lots are 5? And actually,
Well, the
follow-up,
question is the difference between the $5 fee and the $10 fee.
and just as a follow-up to that question, does this authorization by this body then enable the Board of Selectmen after the public hearing to set any rate they wish? Just wanted to clarify that.
In fact, I made sure that in the motion that we passed for the, that was introduced by Ralph, that we gave back to the parking authority the full authority to set rates after the initial thing, unless you guys want to be here for every time they change a rate, which I didn't think we wanted to do. So that is, they will have full authority similar to the ordinance that they have. We are required to do the initial rate. The $10 lot is because that's what they're charging now. They seem to have a marketplace for that $10 lot. What the final decision will again be the parking authority, Board of Selectmen, and they have not indicated in any of their discussions that they're moving it to $5. This is an accepted rate. They have a number of people who do like parking there, and it's still cheaper than going to Stamford.
Okay, others? All right. Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. The result of 25-23, amendment to the Coons lot, passed 64 in favor, 1 no, 4 abstentions. Opposed, please. And abstentions. All right. While we're counting the votes, we'll move on to item 25-25, changes to Chapter 14 of Section 61 of the Town Charter relating to harbors. Speaking on behalf of Park and Recreation Committee, Adele Conniff.
Adele Conniff, District 3. I'll be as fast as I can be. RTM Parks and Recreation Committee. I'd like to move 2526, resolution of the Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Darien approving an amendment to the charter relating to harbors. Do I have a second? Patty. With no objection, I'd like to waive the reading of the resolution. The proposed change to the Charter Section 61 provides for the appointment of a special harbor constable by the Board of Selectmen to enforce the harbor ordinances in addition to the Darien Police. The special harbor constable position may be held by the harbor master, or an additional individual may be appointed. The Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters brought to the Selectmen suggested revisions to Chapter XIV, Section 61 of the Town Charter, as well as proposed revisions to Chapter 78 of the Code of Ordinances on March 24, 2025. The Commission had been working with the Darien Harbor Master for over a year on these revisions. The Commission had reviewed harbor governance in other coastal towns in Connecticut and sought to codify present practices and to make Darien waters safer. The Selectmen approved a motion to recommend the proposed revisions to the Town Charter and the town's harbor ordinance to the RTM. Frank Kemp from TGSNA, along with the town clerk, organized that proper notice was given in newspapers and on the town website for a public hearing. A question and answer session was held on June 10, 2025, with members of TGSNA, Parks and Recreation, and Public Health and Safety Committees, the Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters, and the Harbor Master.
A public hearing was held on June 11th, 2025. There were 2 speakers at the public hearing with a letter from a third person read into the record as well. Approximately 10 additional emails have been received by the RTM on the revisions. TGS&A met on June 17th, 2025 to review and revise the proposed charter and ordinance revisions. Over the summer, the suggested changes were reviewed by Town Council, and the Parks and Recreation Committee met on September 24th to discuss possible further revisions, which were then sent along with suggested edits from Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters Co-Chairman Sam Bridges back to Town Council for final review. TGS&A met on October 21st, and Parks and Recreation met on October 22nd for reviews and final votes on the document. At their meeting on October 22nd, the Parks and Recreation Committee reviewed the charter revision, which appoints a special harbor constable to the Board of Selectmen to enforce the harbor ordinances in addition to Darien Police, with 13 of 14 members present, 2 members joined by phone, constituting a quorum. The committee voted unanimously to support this charter revision. 1 member was disappointed that though the charter gives the RTM the power over setting speed limits, in actuality the state statutes supersede that authority. The Parks and Recreation Committee encourages the RTM to support this charter revision.
Joe, anything further? For speaking on behalf of TGS&A, Joe Michelli.
Joe Michelli, District 4, Vice Chair of TGS&A. We had a meeting of the TGS&A with 8 of our 11 members present and voted 8 in favor and 1 opposed to this motion.
Any other committees? Town officials? Debate from the body? See none. Electors of the town? Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Adele brought to my attention that the Pear Tree Building Committee is seeking a representative from the RTM to be part of that. And if you have any nominees, that would be helpful. Opposed, please. And abstentions. So the Park and Recreation Committee voted a recommendation, but I wanted to make sure that the body as a whole heard about this in case there are some others from the RTM who would be interested on being the Pear Tree Building Committee. If you'll get your nominations into myself or town clerk, we'll put it on the agenda of the Rules Committee and bring it before you at the next meeting. Okay, looks like we're got the votes in, that's good. The next item is item 25-26, approve changes to Chapter 78 of the Code of Ordinances. Speaking for Park and Recreation, Adele Coniff.
Adele Coniff, District 3, RTM Parks and Recreation Committee. I'd like to move 2527, resolution of the Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Darien approving an amendment to the ordinance relating to harbors. Do I have a second? Sue Ellen. With no objection, I'd like to waive the reading of the resolution. The The proposed changes to Chapter 78 include provisions governing mooring assignments and standards, authorize the special constable to oversee and enforce such provisions, replace the minimum speed limit with a slow no-wake zone, and define and differentiate between berthing and day mooring harbors. As earlier reported, these town harbor ordinance revisions were presented to the Board of Selectmen by the Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters in March, and the Selectmen approved a motion to recommend the revisions to the RTM. Proper notice was given, a Q&A session was held, and a public hearing was held on June 11th. TGS&A met on June 17th, 2025 to review and revise the proposed revisions. After Town Council edited the document, the Parks and Recreation Committee met on September 24th to discuss and review the document. The committee had a robust discussion about the rights and responsibilities of the mooring holder, including only the vessel registered with a valid mooring permit may use the mooring, and if a vessel will be off its mooring in a berthing harbor for more than 4 consecutive weeks, the mooring holder must notify the special harbor constable. We also discussed the number of vessels allowed to be rafted together, changing from 3 to 4. The committee decided on only 3 edits to the document. 1, changing the definition of a day harbor that the captain must remain on the vessel to read must remain in control of the vessel at all times. 2, Section 7823H, deleting the word mooring before fees so the sentence reads all applicable fees, and adding wording to ensure mooring and slip holders will be notified of updates to the ordinances. Town Council inserted this concept in Section 7828. Parks and Recreation Committee met again on October 22nd with 13 of 14 members in attendance, 2 members attending by phone, and voted the following: 11 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention. The dissenting member felt there was too much burden on the mooring holder, and a lot of power was concentrated in one person, with one's only appeal of a decision being made to the town board that had appointed that person. The abstaining member felt they were not well enough informed. The Parks and Recreation Committee, after careful consideration, voted in support of these amendments to the harbor ordinances and recommends the same to the RTM.
Joe, TGS&A, speaking on behalf of TGS&A, Joe Michelli.
Joe Michelli, District 4, Vice Chair, TGS&A. On October 21st, with 8 of 11 members of our committee, we voted 7 in favor and 1 opposed to this resolution.
Okay, any other committees? Town officials? Members of the body, any debate? Yes, go ahead. Susan Marks.
Susan Marks, District 5. I am a member of Parks and Rec. I was the vote that voted against this, and Adele did a good job explaining, but I was listening to what Jim Cameron said, and I listened to a lot of boaters' constituencies over this summer. I am a member of Norotan Yacht Club, and there were a lot of people that were not pleased with some of the points of this. So I just thought I would make sure the body knows. Again, it was all of my points were raised at our subcommittee meeting, and they were defeated, but I do think the body should know. So one of the biggest objections is 7832, rights and responsibilities of the mooring holder. Only the vessel registered with a valid mooring permit may use the mooring. Mooring holders may not grant access to the mooring for use by other vessels, including those owned by family members. I should also say, I've been boating on a mooring in this town for almost 30 years, so I feel like I'm very attuned to what's going on. So if my son is visiting with his boat, he cannot use my mooring, technically even for an hour, the way this is written. He could get, we could get a violation and our mooring could be taken away. The second reason was about 7832E. If a vessel is off its mooring in a berthing harbor for more than 4 consecutive weeks during that period, the mooring holder must notify the special constable The notice must be included the departure date, the anticipated return date. Requests for exceptions may be granted at reasonable discretion of the special harbor constable. So my analogy was, if you go to Florida or you go anywhere for 4 weeks, you do not notify the police that you're gone. So I think it's a burden to put on to the mooring holder that they must notify the special constable. You could be traveling up in Nantucket for 3 weeks, you could get stuck in a storm. I don't agree with it. So I just thought I should let everyone know the reasons why I voted no. There are a few others, but those were the two main ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Any other debate? Any other persons? Electors of the town? Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Results of 25-25, the Harbor Charter change, 61 in favor, 1 no, 3 abstentions. Please stay until we count the results of this. No votes, please. And abstentions. Wait a minute till we get all the votes done, and I can announce the results. Please remember, if you have any nominees for the Pear Tree Point Building Committee, please get them into us so we can address that at the next meeting. Okay.
There's 11. You got 25, 25?
Yeah.
Cameron disappeared.
There we go. All right. Revision to the vote on 25-25, Harbor Charter change, 60 in favor, 1 no, 3 abstentions. Results of 25-26, the Harbor Ordinance, 49 in favor, 10 noes, 3 abstain. Motion passes. I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Mr. Adaletta, certainly. All in favor, please rise.